When my husband took the overnight contract in Houston, I told him I'd be fine. We'd only been married 2 years, and late shifts weren't new to us. I worked remotely from our townhouse outside Dallas, spent evenings watching Netflix, and tried not to miss him too much. That's when he started coming around more often. Ryan had been my husband's friend since college. He was loud, always joking, always lingering a little too long. I never liked the way his eyes followed me around the room. But whenever I mentioned it, my husband brushed it off. That's just Ryan. He's harmless. Harmless men don't let themselves into your house without knocking. That Friday night, I was finishing up some reports when I heard the front door open. I froze. My husband wasn't due back until Sunday. Ryan's voice echoed down the hallway. "Hey, thought you might need some company." My stomach dropped. I told him it wasn't a good time. He laughed it off and stepped closer. I could smell alcohol on his breath. His tone shifted from playful to something darker, heavier. "You're always alone when he's gone," he said. "Must get lonely." I told him to leave. I reached for my phone. That's when he pulled out a pistol. It wasn't pointed at me at first. He just held it there casually, like it was part of the conversation. My heart slammed against my ribs so hard I thought I might faint. "You don't want to make this complicated," he whispered. Time didn't move normally after that. Every second felt stretched thin, fragile. I remember thinking, stay alive. Just stay alive. I did what I had to do to survive that night. But what Ryan didn't know was that I was not weak. And I was not alone. Because the moment he left the next morning, thinking he'd gotten away with it, I started planning. And I don't mean crying in a corner planning. I mean calculated, quiet, legal. If he wanted to play with fear, I was about to show him what real consequences looked like. The second Ryan walked out of my house the next morning, I locked the door, slid to the floor, and let myself shake. But only for 5 minutes. Then survival mode turned into strategy mode. I didn't call my husband first. As much as I loved him, I knew he would react emotionally. He would drive back in a rage. He might even confront Ryan directly. And that would only make things worse. No, I needed proof. My hands trembled as I picked up my phone and scrolled through my settings. Our townhouse had a basic security system, motion cameras at the front door and in the living room. We'd installed them after a break-in down the street last year. I'd almost forgotten about them. Almost. I logged into the app, and there he was, clear as day. Ryan entering without permission. Ryan holding the pistol. Ryan cornering me in the living room. The footage didn't capture everything that happened later, but it showed enough. Enough to prove he forced his way in. Enough to prove he had a weapon. Enough to show I wasn't lying. My breathing steadied. Then my phone buzzed. A text from him. "Don't tell your husband. It'll ruin everything. Nobody will believe you anyway." I stared at the screen. That was his mistake. Instead of blocking him, I replied. I kept my tone neutral, calm, almost friendly. "You scared me last night. Why did you bring a gun?" He responded instantly. "Relax. I just needed you to cooperate." Cooperate. I felt sick, but I kept typing. "So you admit you forced me?" 3 dots appeared. Then, "Don't act innocent. You knew what you were doing." There it was. Manipulation. Blame shifting. And most importantly, written evidence. I screenshotted everything. Then I called a lawyer. Not the police. Not yet. The attorney I reached was recommended by a coworker months ago for a property issue. When I explained what happened, her voice changed from professional to razor sharp. "Do not warn him. Do not confront him. Preserve every message, and come to my office immediately." By noon, I was sitting across from her polished oak desk, watching her review the footage and texts. When she finished, she looked up at me and said, 4 words that made my pulse steady for the first time. "Since that night, he's going to prison." And for the first time since Ryan pointed that gun at me, I wasn't afraid. I was furious. Part 3 continues. My attorney didn't waste time. By that afternoon, we were sitting inside a quiet conference room at the county police department. I hadn't told my husband yet. I needed everything documented first, airtight, undeniable. When the detective entered, I expected skepticism. Instead, I got focus. They watched the footage twice. The moment Ryan stepped into frame holding the pistol, the detective paused it and leaned closer. "He doesn't live here?" "No. I answered steadily. He never had permission to enter. Then they read the texts. The room shifted. What Ryan thought were clever manipulations read like confessions in black and white. His words weren't vague. They weren't flirty. They were coercive. And coercion with a firearm isn't a misunderstanding. It's a felony. The detective asked if I felt safe. I said yes because Ryan believed I was too scared to report him. That arrogance was protecting me for the moment. But that wouldn't last. They advised me not to block him. Instead, I was to continue responding minimally. Keep him talking. Let him feel in control. That night, I finally called my husband. I'll never forget the silence on the other end of the phone. After I told him everything. Not disbelief. Not doubt. Just rage breathing through the line. I'm coming home, he said. No, I replied firmly. I already handled it. And for the first time in our marriage, he heard something different in my voice. Not fear, not vulnerability. Steel. The next day, Ryan texted again. You've been quiet. We good? I typed carefully. I'm just processing. You crossed a line. He sent a laughing emoji. You won't do anything. You need me to keep quiet too. That was when I understood something chilling. He thought I had something to lose. He believed shame would silence me. He underestimated how little I cared about protecting his reputation. Because while he was sending smug messages, the police were building a warrant. The detective called me 2 days later. We're ready. They had enough for unlawful entry, criminal threats, and aggravated assault with a firearm. The messages sealed it. The footage strengthened it. My formal statement finalized it. They didn't warn him. They didn't call him in politely. They arrested him at his workplace, in front of everyone. And I made sure I was there not to confront him, but to watch. When they walked him out in handcuffs, his eyes scanned the parking lot in confusion. Then he saw me, and in that moment, the mask dropped. The cocky grin was gone. The confidence evaporated. For the first time since that night, he looked afraid. Ryan tried to make bail. That was his first mistake after the arrest. Because the moment his attorney reviewed the evidence, the footage, the texts, the formal charges, the tone shifted. This wasn't going to be brushed off as a misunderstanding between friends. The district attorney added enhancements. Because of the firearm, that meant serious time. My husband stood beside me at the first hearing. He hadn't said much since coming home. The guilt in his eyes cut deeper than anything Ryan had done. He kept repeating, I should have seen it. I should have known. But this wasn't his shame to carry. Ryan walked into the courtroom wearing county orange instead of his usual expensive jackets. His hair was messy, his posture smaller. He refused to look at me at first. Then his lawyer tried the predictable route. They hinted that maybe I had misinterpreted the situation. Maybe there had been mixed signals. Maybe this was personal regret. The prosecutor didn't even blink. They played the security footage on the courtroom monitor. There's something powerful about silence in a courtroom. No dramatic music, no raised voices, just undeniable evidence filling the room. You could hear Ryan's own recorded voice as he stepped inside my home. You could see the gun in his hand. You could watch me backing away. And then they displayed the texts. I just needed you to cooperate. Don't act innocent. You won't do anything. Each sentence echoed louder than shouting. Ryan finally looked at me then. Not with anger, with panic. The judge denied bail, citing risk to the victim, risk to the community, risk with a firearm. Ryan was led away again in handcuffs. This time slower, less arrogant. Outside the courtroom, reporters had gathered. Apparently, local man arrested for armed coercion against friend's wife. Makes headlines in suburban Texas. I didn't hide my face. Shame belongs to the guilty. Over the next weeks, more details surfaced. Other women began speaking up quietly. Inappropriate comments, aggressive behavior. One mentioned he had shown her the same pistol once during an argument. He hadn't just crossed a line with me. He had a pattern. And patterns are hard to defend in front of a jury. His lawyer requested a plea deal. The prosecutor declined the first offer. Ryan had thought one night of intimidation would silence me forever. Instead, it started something much bigger. And the trial date was set. The trial lasted 3 days. 3 long, steady days where I refused to let my voice shake. When I took the stand, the courtroom felt colder than the jail cell Ryan would eventually return to. His defense attorney tried everything, suggesting exaggeration, questioning my reactions, implying consent without ever saying the word outright. But facts don't bend under pressure. The prosecutor walked the jury through everything slowly. The security footage, the timestamp showing my husband was out of town, the pistol clearly visible in Ryan's hand, the text messages word by word projected on a large screen. I just needed you to cooperate. You won't do anything. That line hit differently now, because I had done something. I told the jury exactly what fear feels like when someone blocks the only exit in your own home. I explained how survival sometimes looks quiet, how staying calm isn't weakness, it's strategy. Ryan avoided eye contact the entire time, but when the prosecutor rested their case, something shifted. His attorney leaned over, whispering urgently. Papers shuffled, shoulders slumped. By the second afternoon, the plea deal came back to the table. This time, the prosecutor agreed, but only after Ryan pleaded guilty to aggravated assault with a deadly weapon and unlawful entry. No watered-down language, no misunderstanding. Guilty. When the judge asked him to state his plea aloud, his voice cracked. Guilty. The courtroom felt lighter. He was sentenced to several years in state prison, mandatory counseling, and permanent loss of firearm rights. A protective order was granted immediately. He would never legally come near me again. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited, cameras flashing, questions flying. I gave one short statement. I wasn't silent, and I wasn't afraid to protect myself. That was it. My husband held my hand the entire drive home. He apologized again, but this time, I stopped him. This isn't about guilt, I said. It's about consequences. Ryan thought fear would trap me. He thought shame would bury me. He thought I wouldn't speak. Instead, I documented. I planned. I testified. And the men who walked into my house with a gun walked out of a courtroom in handcuffs. Revenge didn't look like violence. It looked like justice.